Thank you everybody for joining us. Welcome to our webinar for the AgCAREERSTART program. This one is targeted towards parents and teachers, and this sort of information session is going to be very much about the how it works and the safety and the engagement part of the program. If you're interested in more general information about the program, we will cover a bit of it in this webinar, but we have done a previous webinar that is available on YouTube and our social media if you wanted to go back and watch that. First of all, just wanted to let you all know that by participating in this webinar today, it is being recorded. And so if you do ask a question, that question will be on the recording. So if you want to ask a question at any point throughout the webinar, you can just pop it in the chat box or throw your hand up if you know how to use that little tool. And one of us will answer that question for you. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I am calling in from today, which are the Ngunnawal people, but also the traditional custodians of the lands from which you are all calling in from today. I'd like to acknowledge their enduring culture, both in Australia, but especially when it comes to food production and stewardship of the land. Yeah, I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Let's jump right on in. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to the team. So my name is Kayla Evans and I am the project manager for the AgCAREERSTART program. I have been with NFF since the start of the year, since the pilot or the inception of the program. I am joined by Stephanie Blake, who is on the left of the photo, and I'm sure she's waving at you now on screen. Steph is our community engagement officer, and you'll hear a bit more about what that role entails later on. And then we've got Chloe Dutchke, who is our training and career development officer. Do feel free to screen record this if you like, take a snapshot, otherwise take a photo. But like I said, it's being recorded, so all this information will be available after the webinar as well. So what is AgCAREERSTART? Hopefully by now you know a little bit about the program, or you've at least had an intro, but I will cover a bit of it here. So AgCAREERSTART is a 10 to 12 month agricultural gap year program designed to kickstart young Australians' careers in farming. So the unique part about this program, well, there are a lot of unique parts, but first and foremost, it's a farm-based gap year program. So it is, primarily most of the time in the regions, but definitely in the production side of agriculture. And we'll talk about the different parts of the industry in a little bit. But this program is for anyone who is 17 to 25 years of age. So from school leaver right through to maybe a university gap year, or someone who's just looking for a really early career change. This is a great opportunity for them. Our participants are matched through the program with a host farmer based on their skills and interests. So that's where this program is fantastic. You need not have any experience to participate. Our participants will work and earn on farm for 10 to 12 months. They receive training, mentoring, support to complete a training program of their choice. And we'll talk about all of this in a bit more detail later. And they also enjoy access to industry events and a network of industry members and peers. And I really think this is the standout point of the program, in that not only are we putting them on farm for a year, but should they so choose to make the most of the program and it's, I suppose, leveraging into industry, they can really start to forge a career within agriculture if that's what they would like to do. So a little bit about agriculture more broadly, very quickly. So agriculture is a massive industry in Australia. Our population is growing, and the fact of the matter is we need more farmers to produce more food with the exact same amount of land that we've got. So there's a lot of work to be done in industry to produce nutritious, safe, healthy, sustainable food. And I know the Australian industry is really well poised to deliver on that, but we just need some people coming into the industry to assist. As far as job prospects are concerned, it's really, really exciting. So at the moment, the statistics show us that there's about 5 jobs available for every graduate from an agricultural related course in Australia, which is pretty exciting. And as far as pay is concerned as well, the average agricultural graduate can out-earn a law graduate in their first 3 years at a university, which is pretty cool. There are a lot of varied career paths, from animal husbandry, operating state-of-the-art machinery, working in labs, working in marketing, working overseas, in law, in what else? There's so many. You can work in the business side of things. You can be involved with on-farm production if that's what you like. If you're interested in mechatronics and robotics, there's so many different pathways to take in agriculture, and it's really for everyone with any interest. 82% of the jobs in agriculture, you might be interested to know, are actually past the farm gate. So what that means is everything that happens on the farm gate, on the farm property is pre-farm gate. We call that pre-farm gate, and anything that happens after the farm. So let's say you take that load of grain and it's on a truck and it leaves the farm. Everything that happens to that grain after it leaves the farm is called post-farm gate. So 80% of jobs in agriculture are actually in that post-farm gate. So not necessarily working outdoors if that's not what your young person is interested in, but plenty of great jobs on farm as well if that's what they want to do long term. And the other exciting thing is more than half of all jobs in agriculture are actually based within 45 minutes of a metropolitan centre. So there's really great lifestyle options for people in agriculture as well long term. So we really think it's an exciting industry, a very diverse industry to get involved in, and these days a very, very professional industry to be involved in as well. More and more people are required to have a university level qualification to work in the industry these days. So it's a really exciting time to be getting into agriculture. I'm going to pass you on to Steph now, who's going to talk a bit about what some of our participants are up to in this year's cohort of the program.
Yeah, so this picture is just really a small snapshot of where participants can go and what they can do. So we have participants on farm in all states and territories across Australia this year, from dairy farms in Victoria to fruit farms in the Northern Territory to beef farms in Tasmania. We've got a vertical farm in Sydney where they're growing micro herbs for restaurants, to cattle stations in far north Queensland. It really is diverse, and we offer a range of opportunities to suit every participant. That is not an exhaustive list by any means. We also have aquaculture opportunities, viticulture opportunities, so many different horticultural opportunities, forestry. So if the participant has a specific industry or type of farm that they would like to go to, for example, if they have an interest in conservation or sustainability, we can definitely work with them to find an opportunity that caters to that. And just to go a little bit more in depth to that, this is just a quick snapshot of one of our current participants. So Lucy actually moved from Adelaide to the Northern Territory to work on a large cattle and horticultural station. So Lucy's pictured in this photo right here. So Lucy had an interest in conservation and sustainability, which she's actually studying at the University of Queensland next year. So she decided to defer her studies for a year and wanted on-farm practical experience. She applied for the program, and in her application stated that she had an interest in sustainability and conservation, and we were able to match her with a farm that is really using conservation strategies in everyday life, as can be seen. So she works in the conservation side of a large cattle station. She gets to do native burning techniques. It's very cool.
All right, so we're just going to visit a bit more in depth on some of the things that you as parents and teachers may want to know, and that's about the training, number one, but also the welfare of our young people while they're on farm, because for us, welfare, our participant safety is absolutely paramount. So we'll walk you through some of those elements of the program now. Steph, did you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So one of the really unique aspects of our program is that we provide support to our participants the entire way through the process. So that includes from when they apply online to when they interview with a farmer to when they go out on farm and during the duration of their placement. So at no point are they on their own in this process. We're always a phone call away. So basically, as part of my role as a community engagement officer, I conduct regular check-ins with all of our participants. So I call them every month at the moment just to see how they're going, what's happening on farm, and it gives them an opportunity to raise any issues that they might have, or just to chat through anything that they don't understand on farm or anything that they'd like to raise, which is really great. We also connect our participants with their cohort. So engagement is a really big part of this program. So we have very active social media groups where we connect everyone on farm with each other. This gives them the opportunity to share photos of what they're doing, talk to other people who are on other farms in the same situation as them, and really create relationships with others who are going through the same process and same program. We also run a lot of engagement focused industry events. So we ask our participants whether they would like to attend events together, and we organise that for them. So excitingly, this month we have, well, next month I should say, July, we have a group of our participants choosing to attend a conference called Innovation Generation, which is aimed at young people working in the agricultural industry. So our participants will all go, they'll stay, in the same area together, and they'll be able to meet each other in person and go to this conference together, which is fantastic.
And Steph, I might just ask a question on behalf of our audience. If our participants want to go and attend these things, do they have to pay for those?
No, so I forgot to mention that. So as part of the program, they receive networking funding. So they can choose to spend their funding on events such as Innovation Generation, and that includes accommodation, travel to the event, the conference tickets, which is fantastic.
So our participants, as Steph said, receive that industry engagement money, but they also receive support from their farmers as well to get that time off work to go and really do this professional development side of things. So they may have to take a day's leave, but our farmers are all really flexible about making sure that our participants get along to these things. We've got another one of our participants who's attending Innovation Generation, also being let out of work to go and attend a cotton industry conference later in the year, all fully funded, so that for him that's a trip to Sydney and a trip to the Gold Coast all in 1 year, fully paid for by the program, which is pretty cool. So we'll just jump into the next slide. Training and career development. I'll now throw to Chloe.
So as Steph and Kayla have said, it's a very well supported program, and we want to continue that support through training for our participants. So part of the AgCAREERSTART program means that they've got access to a bursary to fund their training. And this training we really want to be participant led. So we really want this to be guided by what your students and child would like to get out of their year on farm. So some examples of training include maybe completing a first aid certificate, doing a chemical handling certificate, maybe doing a heavy rigid license, a truck license, maybe completing a certificate in agriculture or horticulture, professional and personal development. So that could include some communication training, leadership training. This is not only the only training they can do. It's very much driven by what the participants want to do. So if they'd like to do a photography course to capture their experience on farm, then that would be something we could look into. If they want to learn how to ride a horse for a job in the future, we can definitely sort that out too. So my role as training and career development officer is to work with your child or student to really understand and make the most of the training opportunities that they have. And also, as they go through the program, we really want to, hopefully they want to stay on farm, but we really want ongoing career development, and that can be in different avenues. So if your child has deferred a university degree, for example, as some of our participants this year have, we really want to support them into that next transition of university or further education. So maybe that's doing a course in communicating science, which one of our participants has done this year, which will help them in their degree later on.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Chloe. And I just want to hammer home the point that every participant's journey on this program is very unique, and the training is tailored specific to that participant. So there's no prescribed training program except for some of the safety training, which we will talk about in a minute. It's very much user-led, I suppose, but in conjunction with our host farmers as well. We really look to our host farmers for their knowledge around what training is best for our participants in their specific situation, and like Chloe said, working with them around what their future career goals and aspirations are as well. So not just getting them prepared for this year and making sure they have a good time on farm, but also, as I said, preparing them to embed them into industry if that's what they would so choose to do, and we hope that they would do. I think we've got a real life example as well, Chloe.
Yeah, so as Steph alluded, we have an industry engagement grant for our participants to attend industry conferences or field days. So this is one of our participants, Zara, and she attended a sheep and wool industry conference earlier in the month called Merino Link. And basically at this conference, she got to network with like-minded young people. She got to meet some industry bodies and meet producers as well. So the conference covered topics like reproduction, animal health, market specifications, producer profiles, and as I said, it was a great networking opportunity for her. So she comes from a family farm in Blighty in New South Wales and is now working on a mixed sheep and grain farm near Swan Hill. So for her, it's fantastic to see her how she grew up, and she can move forward in the industry now. So we've really encouraged our participants to make the most of these conferences. So every industry usually has a major conference, either yearly or every second year. And so we really want to encourage our participants. And, you know, this doesn't just have to be an industry. National land care conferences, sustainability conferences, we really hone in on what that student or participant is really interested in, and we really want them to make the most of this industry grant, because it's a grant that not a lot of other programs offer, which is what makes our program so unique. So really utilising that travel money to fund their ticket, to fund their travel there, and also their accommodation. So they're really immersing themselves in industry without having to be out of pocket for that experience.
Fantastic. I might just pause here. We have got a big chunk of information coming. So if there's any questions, I might get you guys to throw them into the chat box now, but we will proceed in the meantime. We're about to look at the application process. Applications will open next month for next year's program, so it's timely that we chat about that. I'll just run through some of this now. So it's really important when you're talking to your child or your student about the AgCAREERSTART program that, given all this opportunity and I guess the world is their oyster, I suppose, that they have a bit of a think about where they see themselves. And of course, like, it's a gap year program, so we're very big advocates on them not needing to necessarily know their future right now, but they need to have a bit of an idea about how far away they're willing to move from home first and foremost, because we really match them based on that. So if you've got a child who's just really still keen to stay at home and maybe commute to their placement every day, that could be an option depending on where you live. But on the flip side, Lucy, who you saw earlier in the NT, she was happy to go anywhere. She said, send me remote above all else. So have a bit of a think about that with your young person, but also have a think about what industry they'd like to be in. So before, when Steph was talking about all the many options that are available, definitely have a bit of a think about that, because they're the two key factors we look at when we're placing our participants. There is, of course, a plethora of other questions that they're asked in their application, but those are the two sort of leading points. Your participant will also need to prepare a 500-word statement of intent or a 5-minute video, which explains why you want to be a part of the AgCAREERSTART program and why they want to have a gap year in agriculture. And we had a question in our last webinar about which is the preferred tool for applying, and the answer is neither. We want to see young people who are keen and engaged and they're excited, and I guess they can demonstrate to us that they understand the value of a program like this and what it may be able to offer them. So either or, whatever they feel most comfortable doing. They need to prepare an up-to-date resume. We found this can be a bit challenging for some young people. Lots of them have never prepared a resume before. So definitely something to sit down with your young person and go over, maybe let them have a look at your resume. So really important they list anything like extracurriculars, whether they're in a sporting team, if they've done volunteer work before, maybe they babysit their younger brothers and sisters, whatever it might be, but make sure it all goes in there, and of course their schooling and things like that as well. And then the fourth point at the bottom, which is really important, is to find a referee who can provide a written character reference for them. So the way the application system works is that when they complete their questionnaire in the application system, we will ask them to provide the name and contact details of a referee, and then we will send that referee a template which they have to fill out, which will provide a written reference. So it's not a templated reference that your participant will have pre-prepared. It's something that we work with the referee about, and it's really, really important that the referee is someone who is not related to them and not in the inner circle. So it should be a professional or a character reference. So a soccer coach, a swimming teacher, a music teacher. It could be someone, the butcher downtown who has been an employer for your young person who's done work there on the weekends or something like that. We've had a few this year that were from step parents or cousins or various things, and it just slows the whole application process down to the point that when we move into matching, the longer it takes the completed application to come through, the further down the matching process your participant's application goes. So we'll talk about the preferencing of applications a little bit later, but it's just really, really important that we get these 4 things done on this slide first and foremost, so that we can absolutely make sure that we get your participant into matching. Have I missed anything with this, Steph?
No, I think you've covered it. We've had a couple of questions come in, so it might be a good time now to
fire away.
So the first question from Bronwyn: my employer is an agribusiness organisation that serves the local ag businesses. How can we participate in this program to help kids reach desired placements in industry and or training?
Great question, Bronwyn. And the answer to that would be to email us at AgCAREERSTART@nff.org.au. That will be on the last slide, so stay tuned for that email. Otherwise, you can email any one of us to get in touch. We do also have a farmer-specific webinar coming up. We've got 2 of them, one next month and one the month after, so stay tuned for that one as well, which you might find really, really useful.
And the second question from Lee: do you only have 1 referee or can there be 2? So what we do, Lee, when you apply to the program is you will be able to download a template that you will send to your 1 referee, and they will then email that back to us. So if for whatever reason you send it to your referee and we get 3 weeks into the application process and we haven't received it, we might contact you to remind your referee, and in the instance that they may not be able to get it back, you can then have a second referee, but you nominate 1.
Yeah, if there's a specific reason for that, we're always happy to have a conversation. Like these are sort of the protocols that help us move through, you know, putting 150 young people on farm next year. But if you've got a specific reason for needing more than 1, I'm sure we can work with you if that's the case. All right. Any other questions at the moment, Steph?
Not at the moment.
Fantastic. All right. So deep diving even more into the application process. So applications are online, if we haven't mentioned that already. So they're through our website, agcareerstart.com.au. And for participants, so this is not for farmers, so any farmers listening, applications are open for you now. Applications for our participants open on the 12th of July and close on the 18th of October. So pretty much all of term 3 our applications are open for. Then what happens is, so the online application happens, and then we have this whole process of waiting to receive those written references, and then we go into farm matching process. So we go through our list of participants and we start looking at who we can match based on those preferences I said before, so industry preference and also location preference. But on the flip side of that, we're also looking at our farmers' preferences as well. So are they looking for someone who has got some experience? Because some farmers will ask for that, but a lot are just very happy to take anyone. But they might be looking for people with a certain level of aptitude or interest or keenness to be in a particular industry or drive a particular type of machinery, whatever the matching criteria might be. We kind of look at all of them. Let's say your participant gets matched. So Steph does the bulk of the matching, and when she finds a match, what happens is she will send the farmer the match or potentially 2 matches, and the farmer will have a short period of time through which they can assess that those participants' applications. So they get a good chunk of their applications. They get those resumes and they get those written references that we talked about before. They will also get to see that 500-word statement of intent or that 5-minute video. So that's why those 3 things are really, really important. Then the farmer will look at those matches that they've received and they will choose who they wish to proceed to interview with. So our farmers do have a say in who they end up with on farm, but so too does your child. So when that match happened, the farmer said, great, I'm really interested in proceeding to interview with Sam. Steph will contact participant Sam and say, hey, Sam, you've matched with farmer Sarah. Here's a bit about farmer Sarah and the farm. What do you think? And if both parties agree, then we proceed to interview. If either party disagree, so for example, let's say your participant goes, oh, actually, I know I said I'm keen to go into cotton, but actually I would rather go to grains instead. And Sarah's a grain farmer. A cotton farmer, then we can enter the matching process. But I want to caution this, and I want you to prep your young person when they're applying, that every time we have to re-enter the matching process with our participants, they move further and further down the line, so that our best matches happen early. So the more information and the better application you can make up front, and the more sure you can be about where you want to go and what you want to do, the better it is. So there is room to move. We don't want anyone to be locked into something they're not happy with, but we also have to keep the program moving and the application process moving. So it's also really, really important that our participants respond when we're trying to talk to them. I'm sure it's not, you won't be surprised to hear that some of our applicants, especially this year, have been, MIA on emails for quite long periods of time, which is really challenging for us in placing them. So really, really important that they respond to communication. So, but let's say Sam and Sarah are keen to meet each other. They will do an interview, could be online. So in most cases it will be online, especially if our participants are moving quite away for their placement. But if you can go to the farm, we strongly encourage it. We had a couple of our participants head to farm this year for their interviews, which was great. And in many cases, the farmers are happy for you as parents to come along as well. So definitely the options there, and they'll often offer to have you stay, or they'll, provide lunch and all that sort of stuff. They're very friendly and they're keen to have you come and visit, because it's important for the farmers as well that they know that the participants are very aware of what they're getting into, and it's not going to be a shock when they get out there. So if the interview goes well, Steph will follow up with a phone call to the farmer afterwards. How did it go? What did you think? And if everything went well, then the placement proceeds to job offer stage. So the employment relationship in this program exists between the farmer and the participant, and we are not involved. The National Farmers Federation AgCAREERSTART staff are not engaged in the employment side of things at all. That relationship exists between the farmer and the participant, but we're just there to be, I suppose, a third party support for both the farmers and the participants. And that's really great, because what it means is we can make sure that your participants getting paid what they should be getting paid, and that their living conditions are at where they should be. So, and likewise on the farmer side of things, that our farmers aren't getting taken for a ride either. So after the job offer has happened, there'll be a start date that's agreed upon, and then we proceed to employment contract stage, and then our participants will start on farm. But before they arrive on farm, it's really, really important that they complete their onboarding, which includes some farm safety training. So all of our participants, before they ever step foot on a farm to work, will complete an online farm safety induction. And that's a two-module training program, so not difficult to complete at all, but it is really, really important, because it really talks about some of those foundational farm safety skills. Farms are workplaces. They're also workplaces that have machinery and livestock and all sorts of other moving parts. So it's really important, especially if our participants have never been on a farm before and aren't aware of the risks, that they complete that online farm safety training. So once the employment contract side of things is handled, they move from Steph's camp into Chloe's camp, where we start looking at that onboarding and farm safety stuff. So they do their online module, then they arrive on farm. Once they arrive on farm, they also spend their first few weeks completing another farm safety induction. Hopefully I'm hammering home how important the safety of our participants is on farm. So they go through a whole template with the farmer once they arrive on farm, and our farmers, they receive a farm safety incentive payment for completion of that farm safety induction on farm. So they must go through that to proceed with the program. And it's not just a tick of the box, there's evidence that they have to provide as well to the program. So we're really covering everything to make sure, you know, our participants know where the first aid box is, know who to call in emergency, know where the safe operating procedures are for all of the machinery and equipment that's in use on the farm. It's also a fantastic time for our participants to ask any silly questions as well, because it's that real learning phase where they're sort of starting to figure it all out on farm. So for our participants next year, they will be arriving on farm anywhere from January to March 2023. So the start dates are flexible. It very much depends on when we match them, where they're matched. So they might need to move a long way. So they might want to start a little bit later. Maybe they've got a course or a school they're doing over the summer that they need to start a little bit later. Our farmers might be on holidays over Christmas, so they might not be back. And of course, as you probably know, agriculture is seasonal and sometimes they're not needed on farm until March. So very flexible. If those start dates don't work for anyone, again, please chat to us in your application process. We can work with you. It doesn't completely remove you from the application process, but just might be a bit more difficult to match you. But definitely ask the question. And then, as you've already heard from the team today, once they're on farm, they get swallowed into the program and get to participate in all the wonderful parts of the training and development and networking side of the program, which is just the fun part, if you ask me. Any questions about that whole application process? Because it is quite a bit of information.
There are a few questions, Kayla, but can I just add, so for every single farmer that applies to our program, they go through a thorough screening process. So this is where we speak to them about their employment standards on farm, what OH&S practices they have in place, how they handle emergency responses, what their policies and procedures are around farm safety. So you can rest assured that we have made sure that they are able to provide a safe working environment for your child.
Really good point. And a lot of our farmers come to us through industry organisations. So they're farmers that are well known to industry and peak bodies such as the National Farmers Federation. So we're really making sure we're not just getting any farm or any farm that needs a worker. It's about farms who are really well positioned to take on someone at this level of experience. So not every farm is well equipped to take on a young person with minimal experience. And so that's where, again, this program is really fantastic because we are matching the cream of the crop farmers with participants who are wanting to get a go in the industry.
So we have some questions. We have a question from Ingrid. How competitive is the application process?
So good question, and really hard to tell because there's no real way to say how we preference one application over another because it's really about who will make the best match. It's like a dating profile, if you will. We can't say who we're going to preference over the other, how to make your application look better over someone else's, because at the end of the day, this program is about making the best matches possible. So that's where providing us with as much information as possible in your application process is really important, about showing and highlighting to us how excited your young person is to participate in the program. Those are the really important things. As for how competitive, it depends on the industry type. So we've got some industries that are really popular, such as working on a station, as I'm sure you can imagine, is really exciting for a lot of young people, whereas maybe some of them aren't as interested or keen in going to horticulture, for example. So there's competitiveness in that sense. And in terms of sheer numbers, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So we had over 300 applications for our 50 places for the 2022 cohort of the program. We've got 150 places roughly on the program next year. There's some flexibility there. So that's 150 spots we've got, and that's it nationwide. So yeah. Complete an early application, complete a thorough application, and respond to emails and phone calls is my best 3 pieces of advice about getting into the program.
We've had another question from Lee. Is it advantageous to get your application in earlier, or is close to the closing date fine? Does later limit your matching chance?
No, so we won't start matching until after those applications close. So you won't be on any sort of lower down the pile by completing your application. You know, let's say you complete your application at 11:59 p.m. on the 17th of October. That's okay. I guess just making sure that you have everything in order then, because if we have to, let's say someone incorrectly inputs their referee's email address, that's something we then have to follow up. The longer we have to continue doing that after the 18th of October, the harder the application process or the matching process becomes, and then that's where we get bogged down. So applying early, I suppose, gives us more of a chance to say, oh, hang on a minute, we tried to email your referee, or this document hasn't come through correctly. Leave it to the 11th hour if you like, because we won't start matching, but definitely advantageous to make sure that we've got a complete whole application, you know, in enough time.
A question from Bronwyn. Is there any way a team can get help to choose which industry they want to have a go in? I think I can answer that one, Bronwyn. Absolutely. We have all of our contact details on our website, and we are more than happy to talk through the different preferences to your teenager. That's why we're here. We can give them examples of the types of industry. We can give them examples of what a typical day might look like on a farm and different things to consider and what they might like. And we can try and talk to them about what their preferences are, whether they like cattle as opposed to working with plants, and we can kind of steer them in the direction we think that they would most enjoy. We have sorry, Kayla.
I just want to add something very quickly there as well. So before I talked about the industry and location preferences. If your young person's not sure about either of those, so let's say they're really sure they only want to stay, let's say they're from New South Wales, right? And they only want to stay in New South Wales. It's really advantageous for them to then be very general in their industry preferences. So when Steph calls them in the matching process and goes, hey, you've put cotton, grain and sheep in here, is that really important to you, or is staying in New South Wales really important to you? Because if you're more keen to stay in New South Wales than do those three preferences, I've actually got a piggery. Would you be keen to go there? So if they're a little bit flexible, that's great too. I suppose, yeah, we can better match, or they have a better chance of being matched, I suppose, if they're more open in their application preferences. But either way, we can work with either end.
And on that, if they're very keen on a very specific industry, for example, if they want to work on a vertical farm in a city, then they have to be more flexible with their location, because we don't have like a specific preference might not be available all around Australia. So you have to be a bit more open to moving. We have another question on employment contracts and the on-the-job sort of work, which we might answer in the next couple of slides. So we might come back to that one.
Too easy. Any others? I will take that as a no. Steph, do you want to chat about interview discussion points?
Yeah, sure. So as mentioned in the previous slide, when we have a successful match between a farmer and a participant, well, I'll go back a step. So each participant will receive information on the farm before they have an interview. So that will include what the farm has on offer, the size of the farm, the location, pictures of what the farm looks like, whether or not they provide accommodation, what industry they operate in, what a typical day looks like. So you'll get that information before you go to the interview with the farmer. But the interview with the farmer is really just a fantastic opportunity for you to ask any questions for your young person to really get an idea of what life on the farm is. So going into that interview, it's definitely, it is an interview and you are going for a job, but it's also your chance to work out whether you think that it's the right fit for you. So some things to consider and to chat to the farmer about whether or not there's accommodation on farm. If there is accommodation, what does that look like? Is it a self-contained cottage on the farm? Is it shared bunkers? Is it, yeah, just find out what that is. Is it living with the farmer in their house? Farmers offer all types of different accommodation, so it's worth really finding out what is on offer. Other farmers won't offer accommodation. So if you don't want to find your own accommodation in a nearby town, that's something that you need to be thinking about. Driver's licenses is another big one. So we had a lot of people applying to the program this year who might not have their full driver's license. So this is one to really think about. It's definitely something that is needed when you're going to a regional location. So a lot of farmers or farms are in geographically diverse areas. They're not near public transport. So your license and your car is your way to leave the farm, to go get your groceries, to go into town, and to basically have a life outside of work. Some farmers might be happy to help out and lend a vehicle. So that's something that you need to be talking about in the interview to see if that's a possibility. Again, finding out how far away the nearest town is. Is the nearest town 4 hours away, or is it half an hour? Depending on how opposed you are to isolation, you really need to be working out whether you're happy to live somewhere very remote or whether you would prefer to be closer to like a metropolitan centre. The other things to really be thinking about and chatting to the farmer, what is a typical day on farm? Every single farm is different. Every 2 farms next to each other would have very different days. So you really need to be asking what you're going to be doing, what jobs you're going to be doing, what hours you're going to be working, what times you're going to be starting, how much time are you spending on machinery, how much time are you spending working with the animals, just to sort of picture whether you can see yourself doing that role. Rates of pay is an important one at the interview as well. Every farm will pay in accordance with the relevant award, so you need to be working out what level you would be paid at and the pay rates. Time off is another great one to be thinking of. So does the farm you're going to have a structured 5 days on, 2 days off? Is there flexibility to work potentially 10 days in a row and have 4 days off? Or is there room to negotiate so that you can take leave at a time that suits? As Kayla mentioned before, visiting the farm before starting is definitely something to think about if it is a possibility. Obviously, if you're leaving Sydney and going to a farm in Western Australia, it might be logistically hard, but if the farm is only a few hours away, it's a great chance to go out, meet people on the farm, see what it's all about. Another point that's not on here is how many employees are working on the farm. That's a good one to think about, because you might go to a farm where it's the farmer and no employees, and that's a very different experience to potentially a larger farm with a lot of employees where it might be more of a social environment.
Yeah, and I saw Bronwyn commented sometimes farmers only have manual utes. And so, yes, we'll talk a bit more about the driver's license car situation right at the end. So we'll cover that more. That's quite a complicated response to the driver's license and the car question. But I think, Steph, everything you've just covered hits it on the head. And whilst we don't necessarily encourage you to be maybe in the interview with your young person, if you feel comfortable, I know our farmers would be happy if you as a parent, especially if you've got someone who's 17, 18, 19, moving out of home for the very first time, it's okay for you as a parent to arrange to also talk to the farmer, because I'm sure you have very different questions from what your young person might have. We really, really encourage the involvement of our parents, because at the end of the day, the more involved you are in the process, the better I suppose, outcome they have on farm and moving, because it is a huge thing to move away from home, no matter where they're moving, into what industry they might be moving. Yeah, absolutely encourage you to be involved in whatever way you want to.
And on that point, we've had parents go out on farm with their young person this year. We've had parents sit in on Zoom sessions, and we've had parents call the farmers independently of their child. So yeah, farmers are very flexible. They're happy to chat to parents.
Yeah. That's great. Chloe, arriving on farm.
Yay, so we're at the arriving on farm stage. So we've gone through all the application process, the interview process, and now we're at the exciting part where we get to actually arrive on farm. So as we've all mentioned, prior to arriving on farm, we asked each participant to fill out an online farm safety induction, and it's 2 modules. It takes maybe 20 minutes to complete, and it just familiarises participants with the risks and hazards that could be on farm and how to mitigate those risks. So if you see or feel unsafe, to always say something, certain practices and how to manage those risks associated. We also have a across the board, there is different relocation assistance and support available to your child or student. So that could be from government funding from a different source, not from our program, but from a different source. And we'll work with the participant to access that, because potentially accessing some money for relocation costs of flights or travel money, etc., is obviously beneficial to your student or child. As Kayla said, once the participant is on farm in the first few weeks, they're going to go through an on-farm induction, and that's just a farmer explaining, what are the standard operating procedures? Here's a map of the property. Here's where things are located. Here's a storage area for chemicals. We don't, put chemicals with the workshop equipment, etc. It might go through HR policies, how to use equipment, what to do, what not to do. So, and as Kayla said, there's an incentive for farmers to complete that, but we want to make sure our participants are having the most safest experience possible, and also that farmers are confident when their participants are out on farm as well, that everything is managed in a safe way. As Steph said, farmers are also screened when applying, so making sure that their safety policies and procedures are up to date, and that they can provide a safe environment for your student or child. In the first few weeks of arriving on farm, the AgCAREERSTART team check in with your participant thoroughly. We make sure they're having a good time, make sure they've got onto farm safely, got all the equipment they need, such as PPE, all their workwear, drink bottles, etc. And we just want to make sure that they're feeling supported. And you as parents too can check in as well. We're more than happy to take your calls and answer any questions that you might have about your child being on farm there.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight that the role that Steph and Chloe play in the transition to farm is really, really important, and something that they wouldn't get if they were just going onto farm by themselves or into any new job by themselves. We've had homesick phone calls, we've had I bumped my toe phone calls, we've had I don't know how to do this, but I'm too scared to ask my boss phone calls. So Steph and Chloe are really there to be, I suppose, our extra support, an auntie, if you will, someone they can go to when they just want to ask a question, but they don't feel quite right going to you because you won't know the answer, but they don't feel quite right going to the farmer because they feel like, oh, that might be a bit silly or something like that. So we've definitely fielded our fair share of funny and interesting phone calls, and I think that's the really great part about this program, is the relationship that both Steph and Chloe work to build with our participants throughout the year. We'll talk about it a little bit more as well, but I saw a question about the relocation assistance. So that relocation assistance is not provided by us, it is provided by other government agencies. And so in response to COVID-19, many states and federal agencies started offering incentives to any Australian who was willing to move more than a certain distance to work in a primary industry. So that makes almost all of our participants eligible to receive either this federal or state-based funding. So as an example, and all of this is at the time of recording, so it's the 29th of June today. So as at today, most of our participants were eligible to receive the AgMove relocation assistance, which is a federal scheme, and that scheme for our participants and the amount of time that they work on farm helped reimburse up to $6,000 in moving costs. So that's airfares, fuel, it is excess baggage, some of their work equipment was also covered. So if they had to buy new work boots, new jeans, new high-vis gear, whatever it might have been, that was up to $6,000 that was reimbursed to them. So for most young people who probably don't have much in the way of furniture and things, that probably covered most of their move, which is absolutely fantastic. I saw a question specifically about moving to WA, and the good news is at the moment in WA, there's an additional relocation support package as well. So not only are you eligible for that $6,000 reimbursement, WA has a scheme whereby you just get paid up to $3,500 in relocation incentive. So yeah, you've got reimbursement plus potentially an additional $3,500 there as well, if that's for WA. Every state's different, and that's where you come to us and ask us about all of those options that are available. But yeah, it's a good time to be moving into the regions, that's absolutely for sure. But things may change. Obviously, we're in June now. Your participants won't start on farm until at least January. So we'll will be across whatever the latest is. So best to talk to us when you're looking at your relocation side of things. Cool. During the placement, Chloe.
So during the placement, as we said, we're here to support your young person as best as we can. Our host farmers are also there to support your young person as well, and they're really encouraged to immerse their participant in community. So whether that might be recreational or community networks, including sporting, recreational activities like bird watching, getting out in the nature parks, maybe that's going to a working dog school, and maybe that's also in the agriculture networks that farmer has. So maybe they have a young grower network in their area, which is a great one to get our participants involved in. As well as that, AgCAREERSTART have a network for our participants. So we have a Facebook page just for our cohort of participants. And as Steph said, they're sharing photos, they're talking about their time on farm, really share that shared lived experience that they're all going through. And some of them are all at different stages of life. Some have been to uni and deferred it for another year. Some are straight out of school. So really sharing that experience. We're also hoping to have regular events on offer. So again, attending conferences, etc., and being able to meet some of those other participants that are attending those events. And we really want to focus on that community. It's a real community, the AgCAREERSTART program. This experience that the young people are going through is very unique. There's no program like it. So really just keeping that community aspect together and supporting each other as best as they can to support each other, but also us as AgCAREERSTART staff to support the participant and parents and teachers as well. As we said during the placement, we'll have regular check-ins with the participants. So Steph will be checking in for welfare and engagement. So, making sure that they're getting paid correctly, that there's no issues on farm, addressing those homesick issues, the bump toes, etc. And then I'll check in about training. And training isn't just a first half of the year, it's an ongoing thing. Many regional areas offer different training opportunities throughout the year. So maybe they can't get into a first aid course straight away. We get them into the next one, which might be a month away. So it's a really rolling training plan. And we just have those regular check-ins with them to make sure it's all on track. And then we have multiple feedback channels as well. So we've got anonymous feedback lines if they don't feel comfortable raising it to us directly. We've got anonymous lines that we can provide both the farmer, parents, and also participants. And then we've also got channels that are open for those participants as well. So sharing their own social media profiles, sharing pictures with us that we can share in their experience as well. So we really want to make sure that they're supported and that they get that community feel. So it's just a standard going through the placement, working through that placement, answering any questions they might have as they go through, going through the growing pains as they go through the placement if they have any.
Yeah, great. And I think I'll also point out here as well, Steph and Chloe and myself have all done farm visits for this cohort. So depending on how your participant's doing and what's going on and how the relationship's developing between the farmer and the participant and a wealth of other factors, we may decide to pay them a visit. Maybe they need a little bit of extra support from us. And so we're absolutely happy to do that. And we're very well set up for us to go and visit and say hello and just be an extra ear and be very visible. And sometimes it just takes a face-to-face conversation, and sometimes we have to act as the translator between an 18-year-old and a 50-year-old farmer. It's happened, and sometimes all it takes is for us to just be that early intervention point before things escalate to a more serious situation where people are having disagreements. And so we're definitely involved, and that's why it's really important for Steph and Chloe to have regular communication with these participants so that we can identify any issues really early. And if there is a significant enough issue that gets escalated either to myself or even further up the chain to the National Farmers Federation or even to the department if it's something that needs to be handled at that level. So we have a lot of levels and layers in our incident management process, but the first port of call is always that Steph and Chloe have that really fantastic relationship with our participants. So I've I've just come back this week from I visited Lucy and Julian, who you'll see in a second, and our other participant, Ben, who's on a dairy farm. And so it's been really good to go and visit them and just hear what a fantastic experience they're having. But they can also just sort of confide in me or Steph or Chloe, just, you know, some of the other issues that they might be having that they're not necessarily willing to chat about on the phone. So we're there the whole way through. And then Chloe, what happens at the end of the placement?
So as we've indicated, AgCAREERSTART is a 10 to 12 month program. So towards the end of the program, we'll start to have some conversations with the young people, asking what's the next step? What are our plans for you know, the following year, etc. And for some of them, that might be that they've deferred a uni degree to do this gap year program, and that they'll be going off to university. So having that conversation to say, okay, do we need to be helping you apply for other relocation costs? Do we need to apply for your, you know, actually into your course, etc. So talking them through those sorts of steps. It might also be that they want to continue on in a farming type role, and maybe they've tried the sheep and wool industry and now they really want to try the pork industry. And so letting them know that there's those opportunities and helping facilitate those conversations, and maybe helping apply for those jobs coming up. So that could also be updating their resume, because they'll have a wealth of new skills that they will need to update their resume with, helping write a cover letter, etc. There's also potential for long-term employment on the host farm where they've been placed for the gap year. So maybe the farmer and the participant have had a fantastic year together, and the farmer is really impressed with the person and they'd like to offer them continued employment. That then becomes the participant exits the AgCAREERSTART program and they are no longer part of the AgCAREERSTART program. They become a full you know, employee to the host farmer, and they exit the AgCAREERSTART program even though they were on the same host farm. So that's another really fantastic option. And then also at the end of that, we ask our participants as they exit the program to become part of our alumni network. And that's just continued networking opportunities. They have a wealth of knowledge with the National Farmers Federation and a heap of networks there that we'd like to be able to utilise for those alumni. And then the host farmer will also write a written letter of reference for that participant. So hopefully saying all the great things that they have learned during the year, the great personality they are, etc., etc. So we really want to support our participants that have been in the AgCAREERSTART program to have continued lengthy employment within the agriculture industry, whatever that might be, even if it's on farm or off farm. What's their next move and how can we support them to do that and utilise the networks that they've made in the AgCAREERSTART program, and also the wider networks of their farmer and the National Farmers Federation as well. But yeah, we just hope that they have had a great time and that they're feeling very supportive, and that whilst it is the end of the program, it's not the end of their agriculture journey.
Awesome. And Chloe, do you want to tell us about Julian?
Yeah, so this is Julian. This is just another participant we have on farm this year. And Julian's 20. So Julian's actually deferred a agriculture innovation degree to do this gap year program, and he really wanted to get some on-farm experience. So he's originally from Port Stephens in New South Wales, and he's gone to a cotton farm in Griffith, which is nowhere near the beach at all. And he just really wanted to work to have some work experience before he went off to university. He started a degree and felt it wasn't for him, and then found that the gap year program, the AgCAREERSTART program, was something that he'd like to try before he went off to his new degree of ag innovation. So yeah, and he's just felt very supported by us, and that's really what we've wanted to have from our participants, that they've felt well supported and well supported by their host farmer as well. Julian has a fantastic host farmer who's been able to support his training and industry engagement, so attending various events, doing various training, etc.
We've got a question, Chloe. What sort of benefits would the sort of career development part of the program have for someone who is going to go back to uni? Let's use Julian as an example.
Yeah, so for example, with Julian, he's actually been able to do a communications in science course through the AgCAREERSTART program. So that's really going to help him talk about all the innovative things in agriculture. So sometimes we talk in languages that other people just don't understand. You know, we're talking machinery operation things and just a language, farmers speak a language that sometimes people just don't understand. So it's really how we can help communicate that across to our consumers, etc. So Julian's been able to do that. And he's also got a real world experience for what he will be learning at university. So for him, he's been obviously working on the tractors, working in the cotton harvesters, doing irrigation, etc. And all of those will create a real world experience that he'll be able to tap into when he gets into the actual educational part of his degree in the ag innovation. So he might have already used a GPS system in those tractors, in those cotton harvesters, and that might be what he's learning about. For other people in, say, the livestock industry, if you feed out grain to sheep, what are the effects of that? They would have had real world experiences from a gap year of feeding sheep and then going to a degree that talks about nutrition in that animal and how nutrition affects animals, etc., their growth, their reproductive performances, etc. So having those real world experiences and those lived experiences to really bring into your university degree is a real asset from doing this gap year to then go to university. And just life skills as well, they'll be better set up potentially if they're looking at either being in a rental by themselves or, going into a college, etc., where they have to maybe cook for themselves, etc.
I'll also add as well, in Julian's particular case, I know he's saving all his pennies at the moment whilst he's on farm, so he's making good money and he's saving all of that so he can, start uni and not necessarily have to work the hours that a lot of other people will have to work, but also he's got a built-in employer now. I know Julian's employer, Gavin, will have him back every holidays if he could have him. So he's got built-in employment as well now, which is fantastic, and someone he can ring up and say, Gavin, we're covering this thing at university. Can you just talk to me about how you would implement this on farm? So he's got that support network there as well. But in addition, outside of Julian's case, some of our participants will do their Cert 3, Cert 4 in agriculture or horticulture or whatever it might be. And some of those qualifications actually get you credit towards your university degree as well. So this year might not just be a gap year, it could be a year that you helped tack off some of the units of your university degree as well. So lots of ways, I suppose, that the program aids in transitioning to uni. Steph, I see you want to say something.
I was going to say the other end of that is we have people who have come out of a university degree and they're putting that in action this year on farm. So they might have come out of a Bachelor of Agriculture degree, or we've got another participant who's from logistics background from university. So they're getting that first-hand grassroots experience of how the industry is implemented on farm and what they've learned and how to implement that. It's a really fantastic program. If you're coming out of a vet degree and you haven't had that livestock experience, you could go and work on a cattle farm. There's so many different uses to this program. It's fantastic.
Awesome. I see a question that's covered in our frequently asked questions, so I'm going to jump to it right now. Now is the time to bombard us with any additional questions you have, because we're going to run through these and then let you go for the rest of your evening. So the driver's license question. So Steph sort of covered it before, but in a bit more detail. Do you need a car? Do you need a driver's license? So this is very multifaceted. First and foremost, do you need a driver's license? The answer, the blanket answer is not necessarily. However, as Steph said, regional locations, there's not always going to be a farm vehicle available. If you don't have your own vehicle or your own license, you're relying on other people to take you into town. We have got participants on farm right now who do not have their full license. They're still on their Ls. They're just waiting to go and do their driver's test. But all of that was discussed with the farmer in the application process, in the interview, so that they knew what was going on before they got out there. And obviously our participant's very aware that she can't leave the farm without our host driving her in. And sometimes that might mean she doesn't leave the farm for 3-4 weeks at a time, depending. So just something to bear in mind. But like, they may get placed closer to a metropolitan centre where they won't need one. It just very much depends. It's just about the specific circumstances of your participant and whether or not we can find a farm host to match them. And also in regards to a car, it's great that they have a car, but not all cars are necessarily suitable. For example, driving your Ford Fiesta up to the Northern Territory, probably not the best idea. You're going to get stuck. So just think about whether if your child has a car, is it going to be the right car? Is it a useful vehicle? Otherwise, are they better off just selling that one and then buying another car when they get up on their placement, for example? You may choose that they not have a car, and that's fine. A lot of 17, 18-year-olds don't have one. I didn't have one when I was that age. And so then again, they're relying on the farm host. But I know Lucy, for example, who we talked about earlier in the Northern Territory, she doesn't have a vehicle, but she does work on a large station where there are about 50 employees. So she's got no troubles getting into town when she needs to get into town, and everyone's very happy to work with her on that. So again, it's just about finding the right placement for your participant. So I hope that answers that question. It's a really difficult one because everyone's set of circumstances are different, but like those industry preferences and location preferences, the broader an opportunity you can give yourself, the better. So if they can get a license, and if they can get a manual license, because as was mentioned earlier, most farms will be a Land Cruiser or something similar that's likely to be a manual. So great if they can drive a manual. But again, Lucy didn't have a manual driver's license when she went up, and she's been learning on the farm how to drive a manual license on private roads. So she's been able to do that. And I actually think in the Northern Territory, you don't need a specific manual or auto. So again, it just very much depends. We've covered accommodation already, but we haven't covered meals. So accommodation offerings and meal options offerings are different, again, farm to farm. Some farms may provide accommodation, but not meals. Some farms will provide accommodation and meals. Some farms will provide neither. Just very much depends. But that's often very much reflected in the pay and what they're offered as part of their overall package. So where they may be not offered accommodation, they might have a slightly higher rate of pay, or vice versa. Or also sometimes in peak periods, meals will be provided, but not at other times, or during the working week, meals are provided, but not at other times. So again, very much different from farm to farm, but I strongly encourage you to teach your young people to cook before they leave, because they will have to cook for themselves at some point, even if it's not necessarily every single day. How much will they earn? Again, a really hard one to answer. The blanket answer is that they're paid at or above award wages. So you can find the award listed on the Fair Work Australia website. So most of our participants are covered under the Pastoral Award or the Horticultural Award. So those two awards outline the minimum rates of pay based on age for specific roles on farm. So most of our participants are entry level, so in the early levels, but depending on their experience, they might be able to earn more money, or maybe they're doing a slightly more vigorous or a higher responsibility role, and therefore they're paid according to that as well. So the award's the best place to visit. Yeah, we've got participants, they're earning all sorts of different salaries this year, depending on their experience, how far they've had to move, how isolated they are, what their level of experience is, what their responsibility is on farm, how many people work on farm. So just very, very different. But I guess the only assurance I can offer is that we do make sure our participants are paid at or above award wages, and that they are working the appropriate hours. So we really, really make sure that they're safe, and they're safe when we're making sure that they are, they're not working 100-hour fortnights every single fortnight, because that's just not on. So through their involvement in the program and our involvement on farm, we can really make sure that everyone's doing the right thing and having a great time. What if my child doesn't like the farm? This is a good question, and maybe Steph, I'll let you answer this.
So I'm sure it will happen at some point that someone will go out to farm and they won't like it, and that's okay. So in the first instance, we'll talk with the participant and we'll try and see what the problem is. Maybe they're confused as to what to do, or they just feel homesick, or there's some issue that Chloe, Kayla and I can help resolve and leave them on farm, and hopefully they can stay on farm and have a great experience. Like Kayla said before, we've had homesickness calls, we've had we've had a lot of different calls, so that's just something that we work with you. If there's something more significant happening on farm, we can definitely look to finding you another placement. If, for example, you go out on farm and the farm location, the industry, you've tried it, you just can't like it, you're not happy, you're not going to have a good time, definitely let us know and we can try and find another opportunity for you. If there is a significant issue on farm, if there's been a participant breach of like a safety standard on farm, major safety issue, or there's been something other issue that's been major, we may have to remove you from the program. And Kayla, I'll get you to elaborate on that one.
Yeah, and likewise for our farmers as well. So again, that's where early intervention and us being involved in the participants placement is really important, because we can identify these issues nice and early. For example, with a serious incident, we may, first of all, we'll speak to the participant, we'll encourage the participant to take necessary steps. So maybe it's reporting an incident or trying to rectify an issue or mediate an issue themselves. If that doesn't work, what happens next typically might be a phone call either from myself or one of the team to the employer to say, hey guys, we want you to know we're aware of what's going on here. Can we please look at how we're going to address this? And then if that doesn't help, then the next step may be that we remove that participant from that farm and place them elsewhere. And depending on the severity of the incident, so if it's a breach of behaviour code of conduct, etc., then we may look to either remove the participant, or it could be the farmer, from the program entirely. I've seen a question about insurance. I think it's probably a good time to cover that now. No, you don't need, I assume you're talking from a participant point of view. You won't need insurance. It's probably helpful to have health insurance for your young ones. But other than that, no, all sort of regular employee insurance is and workplace insurance is paid for by the farmer. So, but yeah, so that's sort of how that's the escalation, I suppose. Early intervention from us, regular communications to make sure that we're across all of the issues first and foremost. But then, yeah, we'll get involved with the farmer, and sometimes it's just a gentle nudge from us that might be required, and other times it's a full-blown, we're ripping them out of the farm and we're moving them somewhere else. So, and yeah, if it's not a serious issue and it's just like Steph said, I'm really not having a good time, I don't get along with my farmer, I've really tried, and we'll be very aware of this because we'll have been involved the entire way through, and Steph will go, no, I see what's going on, I understand, let's make sure you have a great time, we'll find you a new placement, and that's sort of how it will work. So no one's locked into a situation they don't want to be in, and we want to, like I said, make sure everyone has a very safe and happy time on farm. Will my child get time off, and can I visit them on the farm? Yes, 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 yes. Please go and visit them. We think that's such a special part. I was just visiting Benjamin on the dairy farm. He's in Shepparton at the moment. He moved from the Gold Coast, and he was telling me all about the fantastic plans he's got when his parents come down and visit him in September. He's going to set up a picnic in the paddock at the dairy and get to do all these amazing things and show them around, and he's going to stoke the wood fire at home. And we absolutely encourage you guys to visit them, and they will get time off, yes. And they may get extended time off as well. We've got some participants who are doing more of like a rostered situation. So they might do 3 weeks solid in a peak period, but then they're going to get a week and a half or however long it is off in return. So they might choose to come back and visit you at that point. We've got one of our participants I know who's definitely going to be doing that, so she can go home to Sydney as often and as long as she can. So yes, but like Steph said earlier, really important to address and ask all those questions with the host farmer when we get to that interview stage. And then, how do I know my child is safe during the placement? I hope we've sort of shown you all the different ways and given you examples of all the different ways that we really are heavily involved in the welfare and ensuring the welfare of our participants on farm. Once they enter the program, they're as much in my duty of care as they are in yours, and we really, really want everyone to have a wonderful time and a safe time, because that means for us, we get to say we graduate, potentially 150 young people into industry at the end of next year. And that's really important. No one wants an accident on farm. It's not good for anybody. And so we absolutely make sure we can, in every way that we can, through that safety training, making sure we select the best farmers, and then also making sure that we're always available if there are any questions or issues. So that's the last frequently asked question. So if you have a question, please pop it in the chat now. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the last slide, which is simply just a massive thank you. Ask any additional questions you may have. Otherwise, please take a photo of our email address there. We are available anytime to answer your questions. We're happy to have a phone call, set up a meeting, Skype into your school, whatever it might be. Very, very happy to chat.